Um, Now, people who receive SSI or other public benefits are frequently terrified that if they go to work or their son or daughter goes to work, that they'll lose all the benefits they have. But fortunately, SSI and other public benefits have safety nets that are called work incentives that provide protection for benefits when a person works, particularly a youth. So we're just going to do some true-false questions. And what I'd ask you to do for each question is go ahead and type true or false into the chat. Nobody's keeping score. It would be a miracle if you got them all right. In fact, the whole idea here is that some of the answers will be surprising. So please don't feel shy about entering something in the chat because it's quite likely that some of your answers will be wrong, which is fine. So first question, a student under age 22 who gets SSI can earn over $7,600 a year from work and still keep full SSI payments. Is that true or false? And please enter an answer in the chat.
People are saying true. It looks like everybody's saying true so far.
Okay.
Joe, Rahab, Amanda, Angela, Judy. Yes, overwhelmingly true.
And the answer is true. There's a work incentive in the SSI program called the Student Earned Income Exclusion. Now, this is eligible. This is allowed only to students under age 22 who are regularly attending school or a job training course. And it lets them earn $7,670 a year without having their SSI reduced at all. It's a really remarkable work incentive. And I think it was designed as an excellent matter of public policy because a number of studies show that if a student, a youth gets experience working while they're still in high school, they have a much, much, much better chance of being employed as an adult. So this is a work incentive designed to encourage work among young people in the hope of them working later in life. So very good. Number two, if a student under age 19 who gets SSI and lives with a parent goes to work, their pay will not lower the family's food stamps or CalFresh benefit. And you can again type true or false into the chat.
So far, many trues. People think that's true.
Okay. This one is also true.
Oh, one false, but overwhelmingly everyone said true.
Quite all right. Okay. So if a middle school or high school student under age 19 who lives with a parent or another adult, if they go to work, their income does not count as income. Their earnings from work do not count as income for CalFresh, for food stamps. So it won't reduce the family's CalFresh or food stamp benefit, which is all the more reason for families to support work, because if they're receiving CalFresh or food stamps and the student is under age 19, then the food stamp benefit will not be touched. Okay, number three, if a student under age 19 works for pay, the pay will not reduce the family's CalWORKs benefit. CalWORKs is California's name for temporary assistance to needy families. That is the means tested public benefit for low income families with dependent children. So please enter true or false in the chat.
We have some true, some false.
Okay, good. All right. The answer again is true. The student can be in school, in college, in vocational or technical training, including Job Corps. But if they're under age 19 and they're a student and they're working for pay, the family's CalWORKs benefit will not be reduced. And 4, if any child under age 18 works for pay, the pay will not increase the rent the family pays in most housing programs. And you can enter true or false.
Michael, we had a comment that for the last question, that was good to know. So it looks like we're busting a few myths here this morning. That's good.
Okay, terrific.
So for this question, it looks like most people think the answer is true.
And this is also true. The U.S. U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, pays for most rental assistance programs, and they do not count the work income of a child under age 18, whether or not they're a student, as income for this program. And that means that if they go to work, even though the family's income will increase, the share of rent that they pay for their housing program will not increase. So what you're seeing here is that if a student under age 18 goes to work, their work income will not reduce their SSI. They earn up to $7,670 a year. It won't reduce the family's food stamps or CalFresh. It won't reduce the family's CalWORKs benefit, and it won't increase the family's share of rent in most housing programs. So this should be a great incentive for families to allow their sons and daughters to go to work, particularly if they're younger. All right, fifth question. If a youth in a job program or special education has a medical review for SSI and is found to have medically improved, then their SSI and Medi-Cal will always stop. Let me explain this a little bit. So when someone receives SSI, first of all, they had to prove that they met Social Security's definition of disability to qualify for SSI in the first place. But even after they have been enrolled, they still have to show periodically that their disability has not improved, has not gotten better medically. These are called medical reviews. And if Social Security finds that a person has medically improved, then their benefits may stop. But this question is asking, will they always stop?
Looks like it's a little split, but mostly false. People are saying false.
Okay. And this one is false. There is a work incentive, a safety net called Section 301 that may let a youth keep SSI and Medi-Cal until as late as their 21st birthday if they're in a job program or in special education. So this is not guaranteed, except for youths in special education who have an IEP. They can keep benefits longer through Section 301 without having to go through a determination of whether they should be eligible. For other youths who are not in special education, they would have to provide information about the program that they're enrolled in, and Social Security would have to decide that their participation in that program will decrease the likelihood that they'll go back on benefits in the future. But it is something that they can ask for. Okay, number 6. If a person who gets SSI but is not in school goes to work, they will have less money than if they did not work.
So far, it looks like people are thinking that's false.
And they're right. This is false. A person on SSI always has more money working than not working. And this is because even if they're not a student, they can't use the student earned income exclusion. If they're working, although their SSI will be reduced, it's not reduced dollar for dollar. It's reduced by less than half of their earnings. So they always come out ahead. Number 7, if a person on SSI earns enough money to stop SSI payments, they will lose Medi-Cal.
Everyone responding thinks that is false.
Wow, everybody is on the ball today. It is false. There is a work incentive, a safety net called 1619B, which enables a person to stay eligible for SSI even if they're earning enough from work to reduce their SSI to 0. And that does 2 things. It enables them to keep Medi-Cal and to go right back on SSI payments just by calling Social Security if their earnings later drop low enough or stop. Now, generally, a person has to be earning below a certain threshold, but it's just about $38,000 a year from work and be able to still keep Medi-Cal. For most people on SSI, earning $38,000 a year is quite substantial, maybe more of a dream than a goal. So, so usually people will be able to keep SSI eligibility and keep their Medi-Cal through this work incentive. This is my favorite SSI work incentive because it's a double safety net. It protects the Medi-Cal. It enables the person to go right back on SSI if anything happens to their job, and it's not time limited. So a person could say, go to work full-time this year, earn enough to reduce their SSI to 0, but still keep their Medi-Cal And 30 years down the road, they could stop working, call Social Security, and still get their SSI payments back without having to reapply. The man who wrote this rule, his name is Alan Jensen, recently passed a few years ago, was an academic at George Washington University when I knew him. But before that, he had worked as the lead staff member on the House Ways and Means Committee in the 1980s. And during that time, he wrote the 1619B rule. And some years ago, I was at a national conference and I bumped into Alan Jensen. I was chatting with him, and this young woman came up to him and asked kind of shyly, "Excuse me, is your name Alan Jensen?" And he said, "Yes, it is." And she asked, "Did you write the 1619B rule?" And he said, "Yes, I did." And she held out her program and asked, "Can I have your autograph?" Because it really is that good. It's a terrific rule. It basically means that a person on SSI has no reason not to work and no reason not to work full time, because they'll keep their SSI eligibility and their Medi-Cal. Right, number 8, a parent who works can use the Earned Income Tax Credit to get a bigger tax refund, sometimes bigger than all the taxes taken out of their paychecks.
Looks like people are thinking that's true.
And it is true. If the parent has 3 or more qualifying children, which generally means children in school under age 22, under age 24, or children not in school who are age 19, or actually under age 19, or children with disabilities of any age, then they can count them as qualifying children and they can get a bigger tax refund. The tax refund for a parent with 3 or more qualifying children can be as high as $6,660 a year. The Earned Income Tax Credit is a tremendous work incentive for people with or without disabilities. And the refund it provides is often much larger than all the taxes taken out of paychecks. Give you an example. A family friend was a single mother with 3 qualifying children, but she was working in a job at a golf course under the table. She figured that way she was saving money on taxes. And when I heard about this, I sat down with her and I showed her what would happen if she were working on the books and if she claimed the Earned Income Tax Credit and another tax credit called the Child Tax Credit. Some of you may be familiar with it. For children under 17, it provides a credit of $1,000 per child. So I showed her a comparison of her situation working in this job without paying any taxes, working under the table. And then I showed her a comparison of her situation if she were working in the same job and doing it legally and then claiming the tax credits. And she looked at this comparison chart and she said, "Well, wait a minute, where are the taxes on the expense line?" And I said, "Well, for you, the taxes aren't on the expense line. They are on the they're on the income line because you would actually be getting more money back in a refund through the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit than you would be paying in taxes. In fact, she would be getting $6,000 a year more income through that extra refund than all the taxes she'd otherwise have to pay. So the next day she went to her boss and said, I want to work on the books, understandably. Okay, number 9. If a person who gets SSI and is not a student or is 22 or older, then work will always reduce their SSI.
Looks like most people think that is false. We have 1 or 2 truths, but mostly people think it's false.
Okay. It is generally true, but not always. So the correct answer is false. There's a work incentive called Plan to Achieve Self-Support, or PASS, that can let a person keep most or all of their SSI while they're working. PASS is designed to help a person reach a work goal. It's usually a work goal of full-time work in a job or a business. And PASS enables a person to pay for expenses to reach their work goal. It could be a car, a computer, education, training, tools, equipment, uniforms, a whole variety of expenses. And what happens is Social Security subtracts the expenses the person pays for from the amount of income they would otherwise count against the SSI. And that keeps the SSI higher, and many people who use PASS can actually keep the full amount of SSI while they're working. So the extra SSI offsets the expenses that they're paying for out of pocket to reach the work goal. Okay, number 10. If a person on SSI who is not a student works for pay but doesn't report their pay to Social Security, they will keep the full amount of SSI and live happily ever after.
Everyone is saying false to this one.
Yes, that's correct. And I think the wording kind of pointed in that direction. If you don't report your earnings to Social Security, they will eventually find out about them anyway, certainly if you're working legally. They'll find out about the earnings from the IRS. And if it's been a while since you started working and Social Security finds out about your earnings maybe a year or two later, then you may owe them a lot of money because they would have been paying you the full amount of SSI when perhaps it should have been reduced. So that's called an overpayment, and it's a big disincentive to work. So anybody on SSI who goes to work should report their earnings to Social Security to make sure that their SSI is adjusted and they don't end up owing Social Security a lot of money later. They don't have an overpayment. There's something else I wanted to say about this. Oh, right. Now, of course, in some cases, when a person on SSI goes to work, their SSI will not be reduced, particularly if they can use that student earned income exclusion. But they should still be reporting their earnings to Social Security. To do an initial report, they should call Social Security, write them a letter, or go into the local office. At that point, Social Security will enter information about their employer and their job into the computer system they have. And then afterwards, the person can report their earnings for SSI online through a My Social Security account. They can do it through an automated telephone wage reporting system, or they can use an automated mobile app wage reporting system. And those are much more effective ways than calling Social Security or sending them pay stubs. Usually Social Security gets a person's SSI adjusted correctly if they report their earnings through one of those ways. All right, number 11, Social Security keeps changing SSI checks up and down because they are evil and love messing with people's heads.
This might be one of those leading questions, you think, Michael?
I think so.
Everyone is saying false so far. Nobody's being cheeky and saying true.
Right. But sometimes it feels like it's true, or it is false. They have formulas that they use to figure out how other income affects SSI, whether it's earned income like wages or unearned income like Social Security, interest, dividend income. And if income changes from month to month, the amount of the SSI payment should change from month to month also. By the way, when a person reports earnings for SSI, they should do it every month.
Michael,
Now,
you did get an LOL, ha ha ha, after that question, just so you know.
Okay, good. So if a child gets SSI, child under age 18, then their parents' income is partially counted against their SSI. So if the parents' income changes, even if the students, the youth's, the child's income doesn't change, the child's SSI will change if the parents' income does. Okay, so I think we're going to pause now for questions and comments. Please type anything you'd like to know in the chat. It does not have to be related to only the true-false questions we've been through. Anything you'd like to know about SSI and work or other benefits, please feel free to ask anything. If I don't know the answer, I will get back to you with an answer.
I'm keeping my eye on the chat box, so for any burning questions, please type them in. Okay, we have one.
Mm-hmm.
This person is asking, I can't see who's asking it, having worked in county DSS as an employment counselor for CalWORKs families, I would like to circle back to question number 3. Mm-hmm. Okay, can we go back?
Sure.
Question number 3.
Yes.
I'm wondering, for the person who asked this, is there a way to, was there something particular that you would like Michael to touch on, or maybe just They're saying this is because it is a student, right?
Yes, they have to be a student in school, college, vocational, or technical training, including Job Corps. And they have to be under age 19, 18 or younger.
So perhaps that's the distinction, the student versus non-student.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, when I went through the first several questions all dealt with how can you keep full SSI or other benefits, CalFresh, CalWorks, um, rental assistance programs, not having your rent increase as a result of work by the youth. Each of them had somewhat different rules about age and whether or not you had to be a student. But this one for CalWorks is very specific to students age 18 or younger, under 19, and they do have to be a student in one of the programs listed on this screen. And
So,
if you would like, if the questioner would like, I can get back to you with the regulation on this.
Michael, they're asking if they weren't a student, then their income would count as part of CalWork unit? Question
Yes,
mark.
it would.
Okay.
Yes, then their income would count, and it would reduce the amount of the CalWorks benefit. Now, it does not reduce the CalWorks benefit dollar for dollar. So the family would still have more money with the youth working than not working. But if they want to keep that full CalWorks benefit, and they're just really panicked about losing benefits, even if they're just reduced, they're afraid they'll be on a fast and slippery slope to hell and lose everything. Then this protection for students under age 19 can be very helpful.
They said, thank you for the clarification. They appreciate it. Thanks,
Sure.
Michael. Any other questions right now that anyone would like to type into the chat box while we're taking some time? Looks like we can move forward, Michael.
Okay. So these work incentives are really helpful, really extraordinarily useful to persuade people or their parents to consider work, but they're complicated. And can you get help using the work incentives? And the answer is yes. If the youth receives SSI, they can get free benefits counseling from a person called a community work incentives coordinator. And the youth or their family can call 866-968-7842. That is called the Ticket to Work Helpline. And they're sort of a triage. They kind of screen people in advance to see if they would be appropriate referrals to a community work incentives coordinator. An appropriate referral would be a person who gets SSI or Social Security disability, is age 14 to 65, and is either working or trying to work. So once you've explained that, then the Ticket to Work helpline will connect you with a CWIC, a Community Work Incentives Coordinator. The agency that provides this service in Orange County is called Project Independence, and their services are free. So what can a CWIC do for you? They can be sure that a person knows how earnings will affect SSI and other benefits. They can help the person use work incentives to keep the benefits from being cut or stopped. They can help prevent overpayments, keep the person from owing money to Social Security or other agencies. They advise people about how to report their earnings to Social Security and the other agencies that administer their benefits to help prevent overpayments. And that's actually it for the content here. So please fire away with questions or comments.
I'm keeping my eye on the chat box. Any individual questions or other types of questions that people have about the presentation or about benefits, about youth working, keeping SSI. There is a question, do you blend this with the transition program?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Could you elaborate a little bit?
Amanda, would you be able to elaborate on that question about blending with the transition program? Are you speaking about a specific school to work transition or specific benefits related program? Amanda is saying yes, school to work transition.
Okay. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by blending in this case, Amanda, but let me give an answer and then please tell me if I didn't understand your question.
And Amanda said, and with the families you are working with to inform them. Okay. So I'll let you answer, Michael.
Okay. Yes, certainly if a youth receives SSI benefits and they're working or trying to work, they will be eligible for the CWIC services to get the benefits counseling for help using the work incentives, and it's free. That would be true for transitioning youth as well as anyone else receiving SSI or Social Security disability who's working or trying to work. Did that answer your question?
She said yes, thank you.
Okay, great. You're welcome, Amanda.
Okay, we have a couple of other questions.
Mm-hmm.
Asia is asking, can a CWIC help or guide where to receive help with tax prep? And then maybe Michael, if you want to talk about what a CWIC does or what that stands for also.
Okay, yeah, so CWIC again stands for Community Work Incentive Coordinator. They should be able to provide you with information about how to get free tax preparation, but I will give you the phone number to call right now. There is a program that Social Security operates, I'm sorry, the IRS operates, called Volunteer Income Tax Assistance.
I'm typing it in the chat box, volunteer income tax
Volunteer
assistance.
Income Tax Assistance,
Okay.
or VITA, VITA for short. And or IRS trains and certifies volunteers to do people's taxes. The agencies that provide free tax preparation are generally nonprofits, faith-based organizations, etc. And to find the nearest program, okay, thought it would be on this, there it is. To find the nearest VITA program, you can call 800-906-9887. And a family is eligible for free tax preparation if their income is $56,000 a year or less. And you do have to file a tax return in order to qualify for the earned income tax credit or the child tax credit. Now, what if you're advising a family and it seems that they would be eligible for one or more of these tax credits, but they haven't filed a tax return in the last couple of years? And it looks like they should have been eligible for tax credits not only this year, but last year and the year before. Well, they can still file an amended tax return for up to 2 years before the current year, and therefore qualify for refunds for those previous years. So that would be a really nice windfall if the family could get the maximum earned income tax credit. That's $66.60 a year, and they could get it for this year and the 2 previous years. They'd be able to get over $19,000 in a lump sum refund. So good question. Thank you.
Let's see. We have a couple of other questions here.
Mm-hmm.
Marissa is asking, does applying for SSI vary from SSA offices?
Good question. The answer is it shouldn't. It shouldn't be different from one Social Security office to the next. And if the applicant for SSI has never been married, they have not previously applied for SSI, they can now do so online on the Social Security website, which is ssa.gov. And you click on the disability link on the home page and then apply for disability. And there's an option to apply for SSI. So it can be done online, which is certainly the most painless option. But if a person prefers, they can apply by calling Social Security's toll-free national number, which is 1-800-772-1213, and scheduling an appointment to apply either by phone or in person at the local office. And that procedure should not differ from one office to the next.
Okay. We have another question from Rahab. What about a college student who does not receive benefits but does have a disability? What benefits are there for this person?
Okay, so they don't receive benefits, meaning they're not getting SSI or any of the other benefits we discussed. But they're a college student with a disability. What would they be eligible for? Generally, I think of just support services they can get and accommodations through the Disabled Student Support Services office, which every college should have. So it's not providing cash or medical benefits, which would be something they could apply for separately. But if they need support or accommodations, they should contact their Disability Support Services office. And I don't know if that answers your question, Rahab.
Oh, Rahab said yes, this person had been denied, but yes, that answered her question.
Okay. Now,
Let's see. I'm
I
sorry,
wanted
Michael.
to continue to respond to Rahab. If a person applies for SSI and they're denied, they should always appeal. Roughly 70% of people who apply for SSI or Social Security disability are denied on their first application. Now, when they appeal, the chances of winning the appeal at the first level of appeal are less than the chances of their being approved on the first try. And that's because the person who's reviewing the first appeal is somebody who's probably in the next cubicle over from the person who made the initial decision. However, you should always appeal a second time. Then the appeal goes to an administrative law judge. So it's not in a courtroom. You'd just be meeting with the judge in their office. But over half of appeals that go before the administrative law judge are awarded benefits. Now,
Rahab says they're in the process of appealing, so that's
okay,
good.
that's great. Yeah, but I know that oftentimes people feel that if they were denied once and then they appealed and they were denied again, the law of diminishing returns suggests that their odds are going to get lower if they continue to appeal. And that is not true. If you're denied on the first try, your best chance of getting benefits is on the third try, the second appeal. And I always encourage people to go that far. Now, the downside to this is it can often take 2 years or more to from the date that you applied until you get a final decision from the administrative law judge if you follow through with the second appeal. The good news is if you are approved for benefits, no matter how long it took, the benefits will generally be retroactive to the month after you applied for SSI. So this means you could be getting a nice large lump sum back benefit. So it's worth it.
Thank you for that, Michael.
Sure.
Asia had a follow-up question to the CWIC tax prep question.
Yes.
She was asking if the training they receive incorporates nuances for folks receiving SSI and work incentives.
The training that the free tax preparers receive, who are part of the VITA, Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program, does not include information about SSI or Social Security benefits. However, neither does the training that accountants, certified public accountants, receive. So the free tax preparers are basically not missing out on any information that CPAs would have received in their training. Now, for tax purposes, SSI is never counted as taxable income. Social Security disability usually isn't either, but if other income is high enough, then Social Security disability may be taxable or partially taxable, but I won't go into more detail about that right now. Now, the work incentives that we've been talking about enabling people to keep more or all of their SSI while working, really only have to do with SSI and not with income tax. So if a person is, let's say, a student under age 22 is working for pay, and they're using the student earned income exclusion to keep the full SSI, that's not going to change how their earnings would be treated for tax purposes. Their earnings would still be treated the same way by the IRS, and the fact that they've gotten to keep more SSI, or even the full amount, simply means that they'll have more income, but it won't be more taxable income. Remember, SSI is never taxable. Did that answer your question, Asia?
She said yes, thank you.
Okay, sure.
Judy has a question. She's asking, how does SSA view people who have worked prior to applying for SSI? So if a 16-year-old works at Staples and then at 18 applies for SSI?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked that. So a person can have a work history. They can even be working when they apply for SSI, and they could still be eligible. Let's consider a person who's working when they apply. Social Security's definition of disability for adults 18 or older basically says that you have a severe disability that's lasted or is expected to last at least a year, and it limits your ability to work. It prevents you from doing what Social Security calls substantial gainful activity, or SGA for short. Now, oversimplifying a little, if a person's earnings are below $1,260 a month before taxes, or if they're blind, if their earnings are below $2,110 a month, then they're not considered to be doing SGA. If their earnings are higher, they might still not be doing SGA, because Social Security allows certain subtractions from earnings when figuring out whether you're doing SGA. So you can be working when you apply. You can certainly have worked in the past, and that won't hurt your chances of being approved for SSI. In fact, some professionals, including myself, believe that past work history after the person has had a disability could actually help them get approved for SSI, or Social Security disability. And the reason is, since part of the definition of disability for adults is the inability to do substantial gainful activity, or SGA, if you've had a work history, then you could provide evidence of how your disability affected your work performance. Perhaps you get that information from the former employer. If, for example, you required extra supervision or assistance on the job, you were working at a reduced rate of productivity, maybe you're working more slowly than coworkers, or there were certain duties you couldn't fully perform because of your disability, or if you were paying for expenses needed because of your disability in order to be able to work. Those are called impairment-related work expenses. Some examples would be accessible transportation, assistive technology, medical services, prescription drugs, attendance services to prepare for work, etc. Then that could help show that the person's disability did have a significant impact on their ability to work. and could actually help them get approved for SSI.
Okay, we have another question from Judy, more sort of a case study here. One of her organization's members has applied for SSI for her son, who was 18. She has terminal cancer, will be in hospice by May. She has a couple of questions. She has started an SSI application for her son, but he will be moving to Illinois to be with her adult son. How should she coordinate that with SSA?
Okay, so has she already, or have they already started the application process in California? And also, how soon will the son be moving to Illinois?
Yes, they have started the application in California.
Okay. And when will the son be moving?
And probably within the next few months, he'll be moving to the other state, to Illinois.
Okay. At this point, I would recommend not doing anything. Just for the purposes of the SSI application, keeping the same contact information that was provided, the same mailing address, etc., so that the family will receive notices of any action on the SSI application. It sounds like under the circumstances, it's quite likely that the son will be approved for SSI. And if they get a notice that says he's approved, at that point, they can then contact the local Social Security office and inform them that he has moved to Illinois, if he has already. But I think it's better to wait until there's been a final resolution of the application before changing his address and contact information. That should decrease the likelihood of any glitches in the system. Also, it enables the family that started the application process to see it through to the end. Did that answer your question, Judy?
Let's see. Judy also had a follow-up question. She said she will no longer be living in the same house, as she will likely have passed by the time it is approved. So I'm wondering if maybe this is more of a detailed consult. She also asked, how is she to ensure that her son receives her SSDI upon her death? Can she notify SSI while she is alive?
Okay, first of all, I apologize. I misunderstood the question. So it's the mom who's terminally ill and not the son.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah. So in which case, I'm really not sure what the son's odds would be of being approved for SSI on the first try. If he were terminally ill, that would be different. But
right.
But I would say that if the mom reaches a point where she's going to be unable to deal with letters that she receives from Social Security or anything like that, at that point, it would be time to notify Social Security of the address change. And I would say even if her son has not yet moved to Illinois, it's probably a good idea to notify Social Security anyway and have the letters start going to the Illinois address so that the other son can receive them and deal with them.
So Judy has said maybe we can take this offline. It's a tough situation. She is asking, what about the SSDI question of it? If someone is terminally ill, would they notify SSI ahead of time?
If a person who's applied for SSI or SSDI is terminally ill, or
No, since she's just referring to the death benefit of the 75% of Social Security.
Okay. Yes. If the mom has a work history and she passes, then her son with a disability may be eligible for a benefit that's called childhood disability benefit. It's also known as a disabled adult child benefit. To be eligible for that benefit, the son or daughter must be an adult, at least 18 years old. Their disability must have started before age 22. And the parent who has worked and paid Social Security taxes in the past, the parent must now be either retired, getting Social Security retirement benefits, or the parent must be disabled and getting Social Security disability insurance, SSDI, or the parent must be deceased. And if the parent is deceased, the benefit amount that the disabled son or daughter can receive is generally 75% of the benefit that the parent would have been eligible for. Now, if a child has not previously received SSI and they get that childhood disability benefit, if the amount of their benefit is high enough that it precludes them from getting any SSI, then they won't get SSI and they won't be automatically eligible for Medi-Cal. But if they're working, they may qualify for a program known as the Medicaid buy-in. It's Medi-Cal for working disabled people, and the Community Work Incentives Coordinator, or CWIC, can provide information about how to enroll in Medicaid through that Medicaid buy-in program. Now, if a person has received SSI, or that they are receiving SSI, and then they're switched to the childhood disability benefit, and if that benefit is high enough that it stops the SSI, there is a protection for Medi-Cal that lets them keep the Medi-Cal anyway, even without the Medicaid buy-in program.
Judy is asking, is there someone that they can work with on all these details?
I would suggest once the son has been approved for SSI, just contacting the Community Work Incentives Coordinator. Until he's approved, he won't be eligible for the free benefits counseling through the CWIC. As far as the application process is concerned, I'm not sure of anyone who'd be able to provide that assistance, but maybe the Protection and Advocacy Agency. And let me look that up, get a phone number for you.
And Judy is asking if they can access this through the regional center, and I'll answer that. Sometimes it varies depending on the regional center. Some regional centers do have benefits coordinators or experts to consult. So I would definitely check with their local regional center to see who can assist them, because they might have a subject matter expert at the regional center that can help them work through it as well.
Okay. And the Protection and Advocacy Agency for California is called Disability Rights California. This is their website, disabilityrightsca.org. And their phone number, let's see, I'm not sure whether Los Angeles or San Diego would be the office that would service Orange County, but
Unless it's farther down. Does it say? I want to say there's a, oh, maybe not.
it doesn't say where the dividing lines are. But I would start by calling the Los Angeles office, and if they say, "Oh, you're calling the wrong office," then try the San Diego office. So their Los Angeles office is 213-213-8000. The San Diego office is 619-239-7861. Now, I'm not certain that they would be able to provide guidance about the application process, but I think they'd be the most likely agency to do that, if they do.
Judy's saying thank you. We have another question from Kelly. She said, with the special medical program, if the childhood disability benefits make the SSI go to 0, is it the same as the 1619B criteria, the same earning threshold?
Oh, good question. Unfortunately, the answer is no. For Medi-Cal to be protected, if a person switches from SSI to the childhood disability benefit and loses SSI as a result, then the rule for determining whether they can keep their Medi-Cal is this. If you imagine that they were not receiving the childhood disability benefit, you look at only their other income. And if they would still be eligible for at least $1 of SSI with that other income, then they'll continue to be eligible for Medi-Cal. But it's not an earnings limit as high as that $38,000 a year limit for 1619B.
Okay. Oh, Deborah Jorgensen had a good suggestion as far as the California disability rights numbers. People can always call the toll-free number. Services are not always allocated by area. Thank you, Deborah, for that.
Great. Thank you, Deborah.
And let me see, Kelly did respond down here. Kelly said, thank you for your answer to her question. Judy is asking, will they be entitled to Medicare after 24 months on the childhood disability benefit?
Yes. Social Security disability has 3 varieties. There are 3 ways a person can qualify for Social Security disability. One is on their own work record. If they've worked and paid Social Security taxes long enough, they can qualify for SSDI, Social Security disability insurance on their own work record. I'm going to get to the Medicare part in a moment. And so, for example, someone who starts out on SSI and then works could then be switched to SSDI. If their SSDI is high enough, it would stop the SSI, but they could use that Medicaid buy-in program to keep Medi-Cal. If the other way to qualify for Social Security disability is that childhood disability benefit, that's getting a Social Security disability on the parent's work record rather than the youth's. That is also a form of Social Security disability. That's the one that has the protection if you're switched from SSI to the childhood disability benefit. The Medi-Cal can continue if the other income besides the childhood disability benefit would be low enough that the person would receive SSI, if not for the childhood disability benefit. So those are both forms of Social Security disability. And a person who has been eligible for Social Security disability for 2 years then becomes eligible for Medicare. And they'll be automatically enrolled in Medicare unless they decline it. Part A of Medicare, the hospital insurance part, is automatic. That's mandatory and you're automatically enrolled in it. Part B, which is medical insurance, you're also automatically enrolled, but you have the option to turn it down. For example, if you don't want to have to pay for that insurance, but you have other comparable coverage through your own private insurance from your employer or a parent's or spouse's employer, you could turn down Part B without any penalty. But yes, after 2 years of eligibility for either SSDI or the childhood disability benefit, you're enrolled in Medicare.
Okay, let's see. Any other questions? We still have some time.
Mhm.
I will take this opportunity to mention that we will be seeking case studies for consultation. As part of this project, we will be engaging in individual case study consultation through the project. And if people are interested, I will be sending out an email. I will use the list that we have been using for these webinars, and it will be funded through the project. We will just need individuals to sign a memorandum of understanding to be able to utilize the case study. Of course, we will change any identifiers or names so that it is confidential. But we are looking for participants who meet the criteria of being within the age of 18 to 22. So a student in the last 1 to 3 years of school, they'll need to be currently in school. The student should be receiving Medi-Cal and SSI, and the family could be receiving other benefits such as CalFresh, CalWorks, and the student could either be working part-time or considering work. Again, I will send out an email with that criteria of the case studies and participants we're looking for, because we would like to provide individual consultation as part of this project. So just keep an eye out for that. And if you're interested, please respond and let me know. Any other questions while we have the line open right now? I've got my eye on the chat box here. Judy is asking if the webinars are posted. We are working on posting our first webinar that we had in February. So hopefully that will be on our webpage this week, and we will be posting all the other webinars as well because they are being recorded. So as soon as the February webinar is up, I will let everybody know, and then we'll regularly be posting them on the webpage as well.
All right, well, Pam, I don't think anybody will object to our letting them out early.
I'm just typing in the chat box. If anyone is interested in participating in the case study consultation, please email me or keep an eye out for the email. And I'll do one last ask for questions. Anything else? Anybody wants to type in? No? Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today. Stay well. And thank you, Michael. This was extremely informative and enlightening, and we look forward to the next two webinars coming up in April and May.
Great. Thank you, Pam.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.